He told me we'd elope soon, and I clung to that word like it was stitched into my skin. "Soon, baby," Ethan would murmur, his thumb brushing along my cheek, eyes locked on mine like I was the only woman on earth. My chest would tighten every time. I was 30, head over heels, convinced I'd found the man who saw my soul. Every morning I woke up imagining our escape, barefoot on a beach, maybe Greece, maybe Bali. Just the two of us promising forever without the weight of an audience. Ethan hated big displays. That's what he told me, over and over. "You know I can't do a big wedding," he'd say. "You're the only one I need." And I believed him. The ring had been a simple band, no diamond, no fuss, but I wore it like a shield. When people asked, "When's the date?" I'd smile, cheeks flushing. "Soon," I'd say, echoing his word. Soon became a kind of magic spell between us, a promise hovering just beyond reach. Julia, my best friend, raised an eyebrow every time I updated her. Over coffee, I'd gush about possible elopement spots, show her Instagram photos of hidden chapels, beaches under lanterns. She'd sip her latte slowly, eyeing me carefully. "Lauren, has Ethan actually booked anything yet?" I'd wave, her off. "He will," I'd laugh. Ethan was busy. His work schedule was brutal, his family complicated. He needed time. That's what I told myself when weeks passed with no plans set, no dates confirmed, just more soft whispers against my neck. "Soon, babe, be patient for me." And God, I wanted to be patient. At night, I'd sit in bed scrolling through Pinterest boards, white dresses, vow templates, honeymoon ideas. I'd imagine signing my name with his last name, doodling it in my journal when no one was looking. I was already halfway his, heart and soul. I just needed the ceremony to catch up. I'd picture how I'd tell my family, the little smile on Ethan's face as he kissed my forehead and called me his girl. Every promise he made was like another thread weaving us tighter, and I wrapped myself in that fabric, pulling it close on lonely nights. The funny thing is, I never thought to press him. Whenever doubt flickered, he'd laugh softly, pull me into his arms, kiss the corner of my mouth and say, "Baby, I've never wanted anyone but you." And just like that, the questions would fall away. He made me believe in magic. He made me believe that love was about trust, about waiting, about letting the right moment come. And I was ready to wait, because I'd convinced myself that waiting proved my devotion. My mother would ask softly, "Are you sure he's serious?" And I'd snap back, defensive, flushed. Julia would frown when I gushed, and I'd brush it off like she just didn't understand. Only Ethan understood me. Only Ethan chose me. When I think back on it now, I see the little gaps, the missed calls, the sudden work trips, the unexplained delays. But back then, I stitched every gap together with hope, threading my own story over his silences. I'd wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, heart racing, wondering why we hadn't set a date yet. But then I'd feel his arm drape over me, hear his sleepy voice mumble, "Soon, baby," and I'd sink back into the dream. I wanted it so badly, the elopement, the vows, the quiet forever. I wanted to be the woman he ran away with, the one he chose against the world, and he kept promising, promising, promising. So I waited and waited. The waiting started to stretch, from weeks to months, and the word soon began to taste sour in my mouth. I'd sit by my phone, heart leaping every time a notification popped up, hoping it was Ethan setting a date, making a plan, giving me something. But it was always something else. A work update, a quick running late, a vague, busy week. Julia's voice grew sharper when we met for coffee. "Lauren, you've been wearing that ring for a year," she said, carefully, her eyes soft, but her tone unflinching. "Don't you think it's time to push?" I shook my head quickly, feeling my chest tighten. "He's just stressed," I murmured. "It's not like he's avoiding it." But sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder if that's exactly what he was doing. I'd stare at the ceiling, counting the months we'd been engaged, the promises we'd whispered. I'd remember every soft kiss, every "be patient, babe," and wonder why none of it ever turned into action. My heart pounded every time I opened social media, terrified I'd see something, anything, that hinted at why Ethan was stalling. But his profiles were clean, polished, exactly the way he always curated them. Nothing suspicious, nothing messy. I told myself that was proof. The truth is, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that good things take time, that love is about trust, that a girl like me should know better than to be suspicious. But doubt creeps in like a slow poison, curling around your heart before you even realize it's there. I started noticing little things. His phone flipped face down during dinner, his sudden work trips that came with no details, the way he smiled, just a little too smoothly when I asked about elopement plans. My stomach twisted, but I smiled back, telling myself not to be that girl. Julia didn't hold back anymore. "Lauren, you're allowed to have expectations," she said firmly, one night over drinks. "You've given him everything. What's he giving you back?" I felt my throat close, the words I wanted to say drying up on my tongue. Ethan always knew how to pull me back. After every tense moment, he'd kiss my forehead, run his fingers down my arm, murmur, "You know you're my everything, right?" And just like that, my anger would dissolve, leaving behind a shaky kind of hope. But the nights grew colder, the bed lonelier, the silence heavier. And the longer I waited, the more I realized I wasn't just waiting for a wedding. I was waiting for proof that I mattered to him as much as he said I did. Sometimes, in the dark, I'd whisper to myself, "It's fine. It's fine. He loves you." But the words started to sound like they belonged to someone else, like they were part of a story I was trying to sell myself. I remember the exact moment the anxiety peaked, sitting alone at a cafe, watching couples laugh and hold hands, wondering why I felt so far away from the future I was promised. My heart clenched, my eyes burned, and still I told myself, "Be patient," he said soon. It's funny how hope can become a cage. A gilded one, sure, but still a cage. And the longer I sat in it, the more I wondered if the door had ever been unlocked. But I kept waiting, because I didn't know what I'd be if I stopped. I started making excuses for him, even in my own head. Every time Ethan missed a weekend plan or canceled a dinner, I told myself, he's just busy. Every time Julia raised her eyebrows at another vague explanation, I said, "You're being unfair." I was gaslighting myself before anyone else could. There were moments when I felt my chest tighten, panic prickling at the edges of my thoughts, but I'd take a deep breath and force it away. "He loves you," he said soon. He promised. I clung to those promises like they were life rafts. I couldn't afford to let them break. I remember sitting on our couch one night, watching him scroll through his phone, his brow furrowed in fake concentration. "Babe," I asked softly, "have you thought more about the date?" He smiled, leaned over, kissed my forehead. "Of course, baby, don't stress." And that was it. The conversation dissolved, like always. Julia got bolder. One night, she grabbed my hand across the table and squeezed hard. "Lauren, you're not crazy. Something's off." My throat tightened, my eyes burned, but I shook her off. "You don't know him like I do." Even as I said it, part of me felt the words crack inside. I stayed quiet because I was scared of what I might find if I pushed. It was easier to believe. He was just a little disorganized, a little overwhelmed. than to believe he was deliberately avoiding a life with me. Every morning, I put on the ring and told myself, this means something. This still means something. But the weight of it started to feel heavier, like it was pressing me down instead of lifting me up. I'd sit in the bath some nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I hadn't met his family yet. Why he never let me post us on social media. Why every part of our relationship felt like it existed in a pocket universe no one else could touch. I convinced myself I was overthinking, that I was being dramatic, that girls like me who'd been cheated on before always saw ghosts where there weren't any. Ethan told me I was intense sometimes, overly sensitive. I swallowed those words like poison disguised as medicine. When friends asked how the wedding planning was going, I'd laugh it off, say we were doing it our way, say we were taking our time. My voice got a little tighter each time, my smile a little more brittle. But no one pressed, and I didn't volunteer. Inside, though, something was starting to unravel. I could feel it in my chest, in the way my heart jumped every time his phone buzzed, in the way I flinched when his explanations got too smooth. There were moments when I wanted to scream, "Why won't you just marry me already?" But I bit my tongue, terrified that if I showed the crack, the whole thing would fall apart. Because here's the thing about denial. It feels like protection, until it becomes the very thing that destroys you. And I was still clinging, still hoping, still waiting. For the future he kept dangling just out of reach. The morning I saw the photos, I wasn't even looking for them. I was scrolling through social media, half awake, coffee in hand, yawning on a slow Sunday. And then, there it was. A tagged post, a friend of a friend, a smile that stopped my heart cold. This wasn't love. It was a performance. There he stood, Ethan, in a suit I'd never seen, hair slicked back, grin wide and polished. His arm was around a woman I didn't recognize. Sophie, they called her. Radiant in a lace dress, veil glowing under soft sunlight. My hand froze on the screen. My breath caught. My vision blurred. My coffee slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor. But I barely noticed. I just kept staring at the photo, heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. My fingers scrolled, shaking, post after post, tag after tag, all saying the same thing. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. It felt like the ground opened under me. My ears rang. My chest caved in. I whispered aloud, "No. No, no, no." But the photos didn't disappear. The truth sat there, cold and sharp, waiting for me to stop pretending. For months, I'd been waiting for a wedding that was never meant for me. For months, he'd been planning a future with someone else. Every soon, every kiss, every whispered promise was a carefully threaded lie. I called Julia in a blind panic, sobbing so hard I couldn't get the words out. She came over in minutes, wrapping me in her arms, rocking me back and forth as I shattered. "You're not crazy," she whispered fiercely over and over. "You're not crazy, Lauren. He lied. He betrayed you." The betrayal was more than just the cheating. It was the gaslighting, the manipulation, the way he'd made me question my own worth, my own expectations, my own sense of time. He hadn't just broken my heart. He'd dismantled my trust in myself. I stared at the photos all night, torturing myself with every smiling face, every captioned hashtag. My chest ached, my hands shook, but still I kept scrolling, like I needed to see every sharp edge of the truth to believe it. Julia tried to take the phone away. I yanked it back. "I need to see it," I whispered. "I need to see exactly what he did." She let me. She just stayed beside me, her arms tight, her jaw clenched with rage. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry myself to exhaustion. I just sat there, hollowed out, staring at a future I thought was mine, now painted over with someone else's smile. And somewhere, in the numb wreckage, a tiny ember of rage started to flicker. By the next morning, the heartbreak had sharpened into something else. Rage. Cold, blinding, electric rage. They shattered me. But they didn't erase me. I stood in the shower, fists clenched against the tiles, shaking with the realization of just how much time, how much love, how much self I had given to a man who was never mine. Julia sat at my kitchen table, phone in hand, scrolling through the posts I couldn't look at anymore. "He didn't just cheat, Lauren," she said, tightly. "He married her. This wasn't a slip-up. This was a whole other life." Her words hit like knives, each one cutting a little deeper into my chest. I paced the room, heart racing, mind spinning. Every memory rewrote itself in real time. The nights he worked late, the weekends he visited family, the little slips I'd chalked up to stress. How many times had I kissed him goodbye while he ran straight into her arms? I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash every framed photo of us, every little gift he'd ever given me, every trace of the future I'd been stupid enough to believe in. But I didn't. I sat down, shaking, and forced myself to breathe. Julia watched me carefully. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. My jaw clenched. My fingers dug into my palms. I wasn't sure yet, but I knew I couldn't just collapse under this. The humiliation burned under my skin, raw and unbearable. I imagined the people who'd seen those wedding posts, the friends who'd smiled at me last week without knowing, the strangers who'd cheerfully double-tapped my betrayal. My face flushed hot, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. I thought about confronting him, screaming, exposing him. But then another part of me, a colder, sharper part, whispered, "Not yet." He thought he'd gotten away with it. He thought I was just sitting here, broken and small. I wasn't. Not anymore. I stood up slowly, wiping my eyes, heart pounding with a new kind of clarity. Julia met my gaze, her eyes narrowing. "Lauren?" she asked carefully. I smiled faintly, a bitter, determined edge creeping into my voice. I'm done being the one he walked all over. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. This was a turning point, and I was ready to decide what happened next. The days after the discovery were the quietest of my life. That was the moment everything changed. I stopped answering calls. I stopped replying to texts. Julia checked in daily, bringing food, sitting quietly beside me. But even she knew, some kinds of grief you have to sit with alone. I wandered through my apartment like a ghost, touching the little things Ethan had left behind. His sweatshirt draped over a chair, his toothbrush still in the bathroom, the playlist he'd made for me humming softly on the speaker. Every detail felt poisoned now. I lay awake at night, clutching my stomach, feeling the ache roll through me in slow, suffocating waves. I wasn't just mourning a relationship. I was mourning a future I'd been building in my mind for years. The wedding that never happened. The home we never shared. The us that was never real. I scrolled through his wedding photos in the dark, hating myself for the self-inflicted torture, but unable to look away. His face glowed with joy. His hand pressed to Sophie's waist like it had once pressed to mine. I wondered if he'd whispered the same promises to her, the same forevers he'd fed me. I cried, hard, ugly sobs that left me gasping. And then, some nights, I didn't cry at all. Some nights, I just lay there, empty, staring at the ceiling, feeling nothing but the hollow space where hope used to live. Julia's messages piled up on my phone. "Come outside, babe. Let me in. Please, Lauren." I loved her for trying, but I couldn't face her yet. I couldn't face anyone. I needed to sit with this ruin until I could feel my own bones again. One morning, I stood at the mirror, tracing the dark circles under my eyes, the way my shoulders curled inward like I was trying to make myself disappear. I whispered aloud, "Who are you right now?" And the reflection didn't answer. I replayed Ethan's voice in my head, the warmth, the laughter, the charm. How had I fallen for it? How had I let him gaslight me for so long, make me feel like waiting was love, like patience was devotion? I clenched my fists at my sides, feeling the grief pulse under my skin. I wanted to hate him. God, I wanted to hate him. But what I hated more was the version of myself I'd become. Small, hesitant, apologetic, always hoping he'd choose me fully. The pain twisted tighter in my chest. But under it, something else was stirring. A spark. A flicker. The tiniest hint of rage, not just at him, but at myself, because this wasn't how my story was going to end. And deep down, I knew. The next move was mine. I woke up on the fourth day with clarity pulsing in my chest. I just smiled. Because they had no idea. No idea that the woman they thought was shattered had just decided to stand up, wipe her face, and take her power back. I pulled on a clean outfit, brushed my hair, wiped the streaked mascara from under my eyes. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "Not for him. For you." I wasn't going to waste this recovery on revenge that left me feeling small. I was going to make it quiet, controlled, devastating. Julia was waiting downstairs when I opened the door. Her eyes widened, and then she grinned fiercely. "Oh, you're back," she breathed. I hugged her tight, feeling a surge of strength flood through me. Together we sat at my kitchen table, plotting. Not chaos, but exposure. I crafted a message. Short, simple. I attached the photos of Ethan and me over the years, the ring, the trips, the promises, and paired them with screenshots of his wedding posts. I didn't add commentary. I didn't lash out. I just sent them, quietly, to the people who mattered. His family. His friends. Even Sophie, the woman who'd been unknowingly folded into this mess. It wasn't about blowing up his life with rage. It was about lifting the curtain so everyone could see who he really was. Julia watched me hit send, her eyes wide. "Holy shit," she whispered. I just smiled faintly, feeling my heart beat slow, my hands steady. This wasn't revenge born from chaos. It was revenge born from survival. The texts from Ethan started rolling in within the hour. First confused, then pleading, then furious. I didn't answer. I let him sit in the silence, let him taste the absence of the woman he'd so easily discarded. I blocked him quietly, calmly, without drama. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and let the cool air wash over me as the city moved on without him. Julia joined me later, wrapping a blanket around us both. "How do you feel?" she murmured. I sipped my drink slowly, smiling, softly. "Lighter," I whispered. "Stronger." For the first time in months, I felt like the ground under my feet belonged to me. I wasn't his almost wife. I wasn't his secret. I wasn't his collateral damage. I was a woman who had walked through fire and come out sharper. I sat on my bed that night, lights dimmed, phone silent, the weight of everything finally settling into place. He married her. I married my freedom. The thought rolled through my mind like a soft, steady drumbeat. And for the first time, I let myself exhale fully. It wasn't just about exposing Ethan. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself I'd buried for him. The woman who doubted her own worth. The girl who waited for empty promises. The partner who clung to hope even as it rotted in her hands. I opened my journal, the one where I'd once doodled his last name next to mine. And I wrote something new. You survived this. You are not what he left behind. You are what you chose to save. The words trembled under my pen, but they were real. Julia texted me late, just a string of heart emojis, no words. I smiled softly, heart-warming. I wasn't alone. I never had been. I had just been so tangled in his web that I'd stopped seeing the women standing beside me, ready to pull me out. I thought about Sophie, the woman who was now his wife, the woman who probably didn't know half of what had been unfolding. I didn't pity her. I didn't hate her. I just hoped, someday, she'd get the truth she deserved. I packed away his things quietly over the next few days, folding the memories into neat little boxes, setting them by the door. Not as a statement, not as a threat, just as a clean, final step. This chapter was closed. I caught myself smiling in the mirror that weekend, catching my own eyes, really seeing myself. Not the woman waiting to be loved, but the woman who realized she was whole before he ever touched her. There would still be grief. There would still be moments where the loss caught me off guard, but there would also be mornings where I woke up light, evenings where I laughed with Julia, days where I caught a glimpse of myself and thought, she made it. I raised a glass to myself that night, alone on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker and dance. I whispered softly, here's to you, Lauren. Here's to the woman who didn't stay broken, because Ethan married someone else. But I married my freedom.